Hi, and welcome back to Women's Financial Empowerment Group. I'm your host, Ruth Agbeloso, and I'm so happy that you're visiting my channel. Listen, if you have not subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, like this video, share it, comment, do all those wonderful things because it really helps this channel. And if you've been here before, please go ahead and do those things as well, but I know you've already subscribed, right? Anyway, it's so good to have you on my channel. Now today's video is called Entanglement. You may need a prenup. If you're not familiar with the term prenup or prenuptial agreement, just let me tell you, it's not a bad word. I've heard a lot of discussions recently about prenuptial agreements. So I figured I'd get on here and do a video about it because it seems like a lot of people just don't really understand what it's all about. I remember coming up, hearing about it and thinking, wow, people who have prenuptial agreements, that means they're greedy. That means, they're just messing up their lives. Like, why even get married if you're going to have a prenuptial agreement? You know, there's so much misinformation about prenuptial agreements. So hopefully this video will help to clear some of that up. And if you're on your way to walk down the aisles, hopefully you'll sit down and think about whether or not a prenuptial agreement is right for you. Now, let me just issue my disclaimer. I am not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. You should speak to your own lawyer if you have questions or concerns about this topic. This is just for informational and entertainment purposes. Of course, on this channel, we're all about, we talk about so many things that have to do with money. And my goal is to empower women to become financially literate. So hopefully this will also be helpful for that goal. All right. So what is a prenuptial agreement? According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, an agreement made between two people before marrying that establishes rights to property and support in the event of divorce or death. Now listen, a lot of people think, when I say a lot of people that I'm accustomed to being around or what have you, I've heard people talk really badly about prenuptial agreements, and they don't even know that it can be helpful if the person dies, if one of the spouses die. So yeah, if that's new information for you, go ahead and hit that like button. And definitely leave a comment. So the first known prenuptial agreement, let me spell it for you, Prenuptial. And hopefully I will pronounce it correctly throughout this video. If I don't, please bear with me. All right, so the first known prenuptial agreement was 1882. So it's been around for a long time. It's not anything new. But for some reason, it has gotten a bad rap. I would dare say, especially in the church arena, people just really frown on this. And like I said, a lot of people believe that, if you're going to have a prenuptial agreement, why bother get married? You're just setting yourself up for failure. And that's really not true, in my opinion. Of course, this is an opinion piece. All right. So it's a serious discussion about whether things are shared or assumed by one person if there is a divorce or a death. So if you have some type of entanglement, you don't have to feel like you're forced to stay in a relationship you don't want to stay into because of finances, because there's money there or assets or anything like that you haven't discussed beforehand, how you're going to divide it up or what have you. I see this a lot in relationships where people stay because of financial reasons. So I think it makes sense to plan ahead, because of course you don't plan for your marriage to not work out, but let's face it, divorce happens, doesn't it? Right? Death happens, doesn't it? Exactly. Death happens and divorce happens. So it's best for us to be prepared. So, what are some things that go into a prenuptial agreement? You might be asking, you might be wondering. So, stocks, assets, retirement funds, debt, property, lotto earnings, alimony, heirlooms, etc. There are so many different things that can go into a prenuptial, I can't even pronounce it today, a prenuptial agreement. Okay, so and it definitely, the terms of the agreement varies from state to state, and it's a personal thing. It's private. No one else needs to know what you and your intended spouse have planned. Okay, so it's not something that, you know, you should feel shy about or feel like you're doing something wrong, because it definitely isn't anything wrong. Now, according to Forbes magazine, each person should get his or her own lawyer. I mean, to me, it just makes sense. You're not married yet, and you know, you're trying to work out these little details. It's good to have somebody who is a neutral party on both sides that can really look at what you're bringing into the marriage and see, you know, how we're going to work this out, you know, and if it doesn't work out, you know, who gets what or what have you. All right. So they recommend that this should be done long before the wedding day. Like, you do not want to just show up the week before the wedding and give this to your intended spouse. That is mean. I think it's really mean. And if someone does it like that, I'm kind of thinking, what are your motives? Anyway, I'm not going to get into your business. So you want to sit down and work on this way in advance, just like you would do with marital counseling and anything like that. You definitely want to give yourself time to really hash out all of the details. The agreement must be fair, and individual circumstances dictate that fairness. So there are so many things that could happen in the course of a marriage, and so many things that you can kind of foresee. So for instance, if you're a woman and you're married to a guy who stands to receive like a big sum of money from his parents when they pass away, because they're movie stars, they're part of the elite class or what have you, you know, that's going to be different from someone who is from a working class background, and you know, they come into this marriage you know, with just what they have or what have you, and there's no outlook for them to just inherit like tons of money down the line. So there's so many different situations. I would even say like mental illness, physical illnesses, you know, there's just so many different things that would impact it. But so like I said, individual circumstances dictate fairness. And that I also got from Forbes magazine. Each situation is different. So there are different things that you're going to want to consider. Now, I want to talk to the ladies, because it seems like ladies are the ones who, you know, we're the ones who are either the most like against it or the most for it. I mean, we're speaking up even more, I think, than the men. I haven't heard as many men speaking up about prenuptial agreements as I have women. Maybe I'm around more women. I don't know. But I wanted to speak to the ladies because, as you know, I'm all about financial empowerment for women. So I just want to talk to you about this, because we tend to be more emotionally driven. So I just want you to know that a prenuptial agreement does not mean you love your fiance any less. It really doesn't. But as the saying goes, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Okay, so a prenuptial agreement is an unselfish thing you do together before you say I do, that will protect your spouse if you pass away, and vice versa. That's definitely something to think about, because there's so many situations that can arise. So let me just give you an example. If you owned a piece of property and another person in your family also owns a piece of that property, what happens when you pass away? Does that property go to your spouse? Does your piece of that property go to your spouse? Those are things that need to be hashed out ahead of time. You don't want your spouse to be left high and dry because, this wasn't really planned properly. And then, other family members or other stakeholders swoop in, grab what they want to grab. And, that's just not a really good outcome. Or a situation where, say, you make less money than your spouse or vice versa, and then there needs to be alimony paid. This is something you definitely want to work out ahead of time. So, like I said, individual circumstances dictate fairness. So when you sit down with your lawyers, you talk about everything that you have, and you have to be honest. You have to disclose all that you have, all that you have. And then when you disclose all that you have, then you can figure out, okay, he has this, she has this, what is going to happen if there's a split, either because of death or divorce. Of course, there's income that's made during the marriage, and most of the time that gets split, but there are different circumstances. So all of that gets discussed in the prenuptial agreement. Marriage is something you want to enter into as prepared as possible. I mean, I've counseled couples in the past, and I've seen that, a lot of times we get into these relationships and we're just not prepared. We just rush in. So it's important to be prepared ahead of time before you get into the marital relationship. Don't let anyone guilt you into not getting a prenuptial agreement if that's what you want, or at least don't let them guilt you into not discussing it. Speak to your fiance and your lawyer to decide if a prenuptial agreement is right for you. It might not be right for you. I'm not saying you should get it, but like I started out in the beginning, if there's some sort of entanglement, you definitely want to know where you stand with your finances, with your assets, and all of that stuff, so that if you need to make an exit, you know what you can do. And also, if your spouse dies, you know what is going to be yours versus what's going to be his grandmother's or what have you. So hopefully this video was helpful to you. Please leave some comments in the comment section and let me know what you think. Any tips or advice, anything you want to share in this area. And definitely like this video, share it, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I totally appreciate you, and come again. Take care now.